Good day, my fellow Canadians. Now, something of a departure for me on this particular post, in that I'm going to, in the intro, some things that might seem irrelevant at the outset, but please bear with me. I came back from a week up north and with my two closest friends. It's a work week. We buzz up deadfalls, split and cut firewood, do some repairs, do some maintenance on the residence. It's a 50-acre bush lot, so it's not on the water. These are my two closest friends. Now, I am so blessed. I have in my orbit some incredibly interesting and wonderful people, but these two in particular, they're both better educated than I, formally, and we're all of us children of veterans. I'm the only one who saw active service, but all of us, our fathers served in the military during the war, Second World War. We are bound over the 30 years thereabouts of friendship that we've had in shared Canadian values, deep and abiding love of this country and knowledge of this country's history, and indeed history in general. When you're in extremely good company with intelligent people, conversations are fascinating. They range over everything. And unlike, let's say, a lot of the liberal left, this is not a situation where we wind up uh, supporting each other arbitrarily. Anything that's brought to the table, anything that's postulated, brought to the table, topic for discussion. If you have a viewpoint, you're questioned on it, support it, verify it. And in some cases, indeed, we reinforce each other's viewpoints. And the nice thing when you're dealing with intelligent people, something is put out there for discussion, you're getting very, very, very good input. Like I said, you have three intelligent people discussing a topic, and something you might not have considered if you brought it up for discussion is brought up by someone else. A point to ponder, a reinforcement, or a negative. It's fantastic. We were sitting there, and I was reflecting on this. I did a couple of bushwalks, armed. If you go into the bush in the fall or in the spring, you should have a firearm with you. Bears are waking up and they're hungry and cranky, and it's just good form to have a firearm with you in the bush. I scouted out some areas for the fall hunt. The beauty of that, to be in the bush, in back in nature and real nature, not yuppie version of, their idea of camping is like Pinestone Lodge or Deerhurst or something similar to that. We're talking about walking in the bush, breaking trail, some cases, terrain that I know fairly well. I've hunted over it a fair while. And I was thinking how few of the modern yuppies and city kids have any connection with this part of the Canadian experience or even the Ontarian experience, who have never been on a beautiful granite northern lake in the early morning still with quiet waters and just swishing along in a canoe silently, just gliding across the water by yourself, watching a deer picking its way through the shoreline, seeing a fish jump, the smells, the sights, the sounds of nature. We saw several deer on the property. I saw fresh track and sign. A turkey came along, birds galore. To sit there of a morning on the deck with a coffee, watch the sunrise and listening to the birds. It was cool, but it was like the weather was cool. And one night was cold, but it was gorgeous. Got a lot done, got a lot of work done. And how sad that a lot of people have lost touch, and urbanites particularly, have lost touch with that element of Canadianism. My father was a hunter. It was food on the table. I know northern people with whom I've had contact and indeed, socialized with. Hunting is food on the table. It's not a sport. I get into that because all of us with the shared values and the deep love of Canada are greatly distressed in what we're seeing, the current trend under the Liberals, which, pray God, 6 months they'll be toast. And if there is a God in heaven, they will get the same resounding defeat that was handed to them in Alberta and in Ontario. I would love to see them lose party status. Now, we all know they won't. There are too many people, in spite of all the evidence, in spite of anything you say, they're going to vote Liberal. Those brain dead morons, if that's what you want, I can't understand. To me, there is absolutely no logical justification for putting that power back in the hands of that same bunch of absolutely useless, unpatriotic, treasonous, moronic idiots. But what we discussed, one of the things, and my personal contention on this, is the upcoming election. I would suggest that you sit back and hang on to your hats, folks, because this will probably turn out to be the dirtiest, sleaziest, ball kicking, biting, eye gouging, nasty, gutter fighting election ever run by the Liberals. Campaign election. These people, for all their virtue signaling and all their pretensions towards social consciousness and altruism, it's all bullshit. And the fact that they see the power slipping away, you know that they're going to turn like a bunch of cornered rats, and they will be snarling and yapping. It's already started. Trudeau, that idiot, already on the world stage fired a shot across Andrew Scheer's bows. He knows that he's the primary, their party is the primary contender um, for the next government. It's one of those things. It's like a family fight. You have a family fight, you keep it in the family. In the military, we'd have situations where, in the old days, where the Army might be ragging on the Navy ragging on the Air Force, but if any civilian came at a military member, they all banded together. They said, no, 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 these are our folks. We can do this, but you don't do this. You're not one of us. You're not part of the club. And Trudeau did that at some conference, and he took a cheap shot at Andrew Scheer, white supremacist or something, neo-Nazi. That started already. Seriously, they're trying to push that narrative. And you know what? With the bribe to the mainstream media that they gave, that $600 million bribe to the mainstream media, you can bet that this liberal bullshit is going to be floating out there, and they are, like I said, they are going to be just about as mean, nasty, petty, small-minded, backbiting bunch of hypocritical bastards that ever ruled this country. I hope Scheer doesn't descend to their level. I think just on the facts, he can kill them. What I am hoping, and I really am hoping, the big wake-up call from my fellow Canadians was the last big one, the carbon tax. Anybody with any objectivity who's looked at the evidence, pro and contra, all the garbage rhetoric from the Liberal Party about environmental concerns and saving the planet, yada, 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 yada. It's all bullshit. They have spent money incredibly stupidly, and they need more money. So they're going to gouge the taxpayers even deeper, which means anybody who owns a motor vehicle, every mode of transportation is now paying more money for fuels. Every mode of transportation. Well, that cost trickles down to the consumer. All your food that's shipped in by rail, by truck, that's all going to go up because fuel costs have risen. Air transportation, fuel costs have risen. Oh, except for his private jet, of course. He has no problem jet setting hither, thither, and yon on his vacations, burning up how much carbon footprint? Hypocritical prick. This affects every Canadian, wealthy or poor. Everybody in this country is now being forced to dig deeper into their pockets to prop up this disastrous government. I don't mind paying taxes. I really don't. All the traveling I've done, Canada is an incredibly great country. It really is. And I love this country dearly. I figured taxes were part of the cost you pay for living in this country. Canadian money, Canadian taxpayers' money, should be allocated to Canadian needs, infrastructure, roads, bridges, transportation, Housing. There are so much. The indigenous communities, well, that's a whole nother story, but there is money needed. Homeless shelters, affordable housing. There's so many areas in the cities and in the country where the Canadian dollars should be and could be wisely spent. I would love to see the Conservatives put out a list of how much money Trudeau has shipped out of this country. Well, I can't blame Trudeau. The Liberals have shipped out of this country. And I think it's a sin. Every penny that leaves this country has come from the Canadian taxpayer. The government does not generate revenue. Every penny that leaves the country has come from the Canadian taxpayer, and it should be spent to improve the quality of life for the Canadian taxpayer. Pensions haven't gone up decently in years. Someone did a calculation that if you did 25 years of work, you had something like $1.8 million you should have invested in the pension fund. I'd love to. I can't find the article, but you can look it up. Someone like me who's worked 40 plus, 45 years plus, how much do you think I contributed to the Canadian pension plan if that money had been put into a private fund and allowed, even with the ups and downs of the market, if that money had been put in there, I'd probably have a couple of million salted away. I'm not more than I could spend in my lifetime. As it is what, $1,600 if you're a Canada Pension Plan and OAS for someone who's put in a lifetime of work, and look at the pensions they voted themselves and get on the way out. This has got to change, folks. We need a responsible government, but the big thing is we need a fiscally responsible government. I've looked at all the platforms. Forget the Liberals. I won't even listen to them because they lie. They lie, they lie, they will say anything, do anything. They are the sleaziest bunch of hypocritical SOBs that we have ever seen, as they were in Ontario, as they were in Alberta. They make big talk, but they lie. And hypocrisy is something that really just torques me. So, what am I asking? If you love this country, the kind of Canada that I grew up with, the kind of Canada I remember, the kind of Canada we should have and could have, the legacy you wish to pass on to your children and your grandchildren, a legacy of a responsible government, clean water, affordable housing, reasonably priced transportation costs, clean energy, good energy, reasonable priced energy. If you really want this, I don't see anybody but the Conservatives coming out with this. The Alberta Conservatives had the good sense to amalgamate with the Wild Rose Party, as did the federal Conservatives. If you recall, the Reform Party, they looked at them and they said, "You've got a lot of good points, and the platform isn't working. We've got to get back to grassroots Canadianism. We've got to get the Canadian people first, take care of our people." Watch the election. I'm going to be doing more posts as the election gets up, and I'm going to be hammering the Liberals on their lies. So far, I've seen Scheer holding the high ground. Oh, I saw him sitting with an imam, and someone was saying, "Oh, he's sitting with an imam." What? What? I don't care if it's a radical imam or someone who has, let's say, cause for Canadian concern. How better to get the pulse of someone who might be a danger to your society and sit down and talk with them and get an assessment, get an idea of where their mind is at, how they think, how they feel, and how better to counter it than knowing them. First military dictum: know your enemy. Get an idea. So they're castigating. They're castigating, like I said, and the press has already taken a shot at Scheer because he sat down with an imam. They say shamelessly pandering to votes. Could he be? Maybe. I don't think so. But to get a sense of what he's facing, I'd love to sit down with a radical imam and get it on tape, because I'd love to be able to report the substance of this conversation, of how they think, or what they feel, and the true dangers they pose to Canada from their own mouths. So sitting down with your enemy is not necessarily a bad idea. But given how much Trudeau and the Liberals have pandered to radical Islam in this country, I hardly think they're in a position to point any fingers at Scheer. You know what I'm saying? Again, but the hypocrisy. Back to that. So watch this space. There's going to be more posts on the elections coming up. The lies put out by the Liberals. If you're brain dead enough to vote Liberal, to me, you're only 2 steps away from being a freaking traitor. You do not understand Canada or Canadian values or this history. If you truly love this country, vote. And I'm directing this particularly at those personages out there who get the impression, well, what does my vote matter? It matters. Trust me, every vote matters. Those who feel marginalized, those who feel disenfranchised, those who feel cut off, which was actually very deliberate. Trudeau Sr. did it, Trudeau Jr.'s done it, is to alienate the West. I would love to see everybody, when you fill up your gas tank, think of the Liberals for the added costs. When you pay your home heating bill, think of the Liberals. Every bill you pay when you see your groceries go up, thank the Liberals. Every penny more that you have to dig into your pocket to maintain a decent lifestyle, thank the Liberals. When you see a homeless person on the street, thank the Liberals. Because the money that has been pissed away out of this country that should have stayed here for the benefit of the people of Canada, you look at those numbers and it would boggle the mind. And I'm asking the Conservatives, Andrew Scheer, please put out a list with a final tally of how much money he frittered away out of this country, out of the pockets of the Canadian people. 10.5 to a convicted terrorist, 10.5 million, and yet he tells a legless veteran, I think we've given enough. Really? If that doesn't generate outrage, I don't know what else will. All this stuff should come back and bite that Liberal's ass. So, my folks, my friends, think about that. Push, get active. We can turn this country around. If you think about something, compared to, let's say, a lot of the European countries, Middle Eastern countries that I've seen, Canada is a young nation. We're still trying on different hats, I think, politically, to see really where we fit. And this comforts me, the fact that we're still sort of in our growing pains. In terms of nationhood, we're not even 200 years old. This gives me great hope that the future for the Canadian kids and for the people of Canada, with a responsible government, we can turn this mess around, both from Trudeau Sr. and Trudeau Jr. The mess that has been made of Canada can still be turned around. We have the resources, we have the educational staff, we have the people. All we need is to galvanize the people and get you involved. Everybody who loves this country, get involved. So that's my message. Thank you.